Hello, welcome to Introduction to Pear Deck for Google Slides. I'm so glad you could join me today. My name is Mary Ellen Yonker. I am a customer success trainer for Pear Deck. I am a former educator. I started out as a math teacher in 3rd grade and then 8th grade. I went on to become a librarian and finally an instructional technology specialist, helping teachers integrate technology into their curriculum every day. And one of our favorite tools was Pear Deck. And one of the reasons we loved it so much was because Pear Deck was a tool that allowed every student in the class to have a voice and a safe space to share their thoughts. Pear Deck was created by educators specifically for the purpose of giving every student in the class a voice. And the mission of Pear Deck is to help teachers deliver powerful learning moments to every student every day. And I think you'll see that Pear Deck really can help you achieve that goal. Okay, so in our session, I'm going to show you how to build a Pear Deck lesson. Then I will give you a chance to see the student view and what the teacher is able to see. We'll spend some time on the teacher dashboard and then look at the back end so you can see the sessions and your settings. All right, so the first thing we need to do is make sure that you have the Pear Deck add-on. An add-on adds functionality to your slide deck. So the Pear Deck add-on is going to give functionality to slides that you don't have without it. To get the add-on, you need to open a slide presentation. So any slide presentation that you already have in your drive, or you can open a brand new blank slide presentation. When you have your slides open, you'll see this toolbar up at the top. And if you scroll across, you're going to see add-ons. Click on add-ons, and I already have it, so I see it in my list of add-ons. But if you don't see it, go right down to get add-ons, click on that, and then look for Pear Deck. Perry is right down here. I can click on Perry and add that Pear Deck add-on, but if you don't see him, you can go right in here and search for it, type in Pear Deck, and it'll pop up. So go ahead and click on it, and then you'll be prompted to install it. Install the Pear Deck add-on. Be sure you choose the account that you want to use it with and allow all the things, and then you'll be ready to go. And every time you open a slide deck, you can go to add-ons and you'll see it in your list. So when you're ready to start adding interactivity to your slide presentation, you'll go on to add-ons and go to Pear Deck for Google Slides and open the Pear Deck add-on. On the right side of my slides, I will see this Pear Deck side panel open. And this is my control panel. This is where I get all of the functionality to make my slides interactive. So let's take a look at what's over here in the side panel. First, we have our template library. This contains pre-made content that you can add directly into your slide deck. So let's take a look at what's in our template library. We have different categories. Lesson builders contain templates for the beginning of lesson, during and end of lesson. There's a learning development section with critical thinking and social emotional learning slides. And then at the bottom are our subject areas. If you don't see your subject area listed, don't worry. We've got this general subject area content that you can use, but every slide in the template gallery is customizable. So you can take any slide and make changes to it and customize it for your needs. No matter what you teach, you can use these lesson builders. So let's go ahead and look at our templates for beginning of lesson. Click on the arrow. And now I see thumbnail images of slides that I can add into my existing presentation. Each one has a note at the bottom that tells you what kind of interaction is included. And if you don't know what that means for your students, you can hover over the question mark and it tells you. A text slide means our students are going to have the opportunity to type in a response to your prompt. A drawing slide, students will be able to draw on the slide, or they can add a text box to respond. So you can scroll through and look at all of the thumbnail images of the slides that are available. And if you see one that you want to use, you click on it. Pear Deck is doing its work. And this slide is going to populate in my slide deck right below the slide I was on. If I don't want it here, if I want it in a different place in the flow of my lesson, I can click and hold and drag it where I want it to be. As I said, once you have added the slide template to your slide deck, it belongs to you and you can edit it as you need to. So I can change the text. I can change the font, the color, the size. I can change all the graphics on here if I want to make them bigger or smaller. I can remove this image and add one of my own. If I wanted to add a Bitmoji, I could do that. I can go and insert an image that I find online. I'm going to go ahead and put her back and maybe make her a little bit bigger. I can change the background of my slide if I want to. The only thing that I cannot do is remove the footer. You can see that down here in the bottom of my slide, I have my little Perry icon, and it tells the students you're going to write a response. And it also says, do not change this link. This footer is what is making this an interactive slide. On the right side, it even says, don't remove this bar. So make sure you can edit anything on the slide, but do not remove the footer. So again, in my template gallery, I can go back to my categories and go through here. I can look through the categories. Let's go to social emotional learning. Got lots of slides that I can choose from. And if I see one I want to use, I click on it. It's going to go right here under this slide. And now this is part of my slide deck, so I can edit anything on the slide that I want to edit. Now this slide has a spectrum and my students are asked for a stress check. How are they feeling today? So if that's going to be confusing to my students, I can just change it. The interaction is draggable. So my students are going to be given this purple bar and they're going to drag it across the spectrum and show me how they're feeling today, how stressed they are. So let's say I want to change that type of interaction. Since my spectrum has numbers from 0 to 10, maybe I want my students to respond with a number that indicates how they're feeling. So as I said, you've got to leave this bar here to make it an interactive slide, but you can change the type of interaction. So back here on my sidebar, I'm going to use the back button. And now I'm back in my templates. So back one more time, and this is where we started. So right here, the next section is ask students a question. We've got 6 question types. Text means your students are going to respond by typing in their answer on their keyboard. They can respond with 1 word, 1 sentence, or an entire essay. They're not limited to the amount of text they can respond with. Choice is our next option. You'll give your students some choices and they will choose the one choice that they want to respond to your prompt. And the third one is number. This is what I'm looking for. I want my students to respond with a number. So if you choose the number question type, that's their only option, is to put in a number. So now I want to change this question type from draggable to number. All I need to do is click on the question type I want. It's doing some work. Perry's going to wave at me. And now at the bottom, it says students enter a number. So you can change the type of interaction by simply clicking on a different question type. And let's go through and look at the rest of our options. Website is a great resource because if you choose website, you'll paste in a URL and your students will be able to engage in that website without leaving your Pear Deck presentation. So this is a great place to add a Google form, a document, a database article, or a website that you want them to look at, and then they won't have to leave your presentation to engage in that website. You can also app smash and add a PhET simulation or a Flipgrid or Kahoot. So website allows you to embed that website in your Pear Deck presentation, and your students won't have to leave your presentation to engage. Drawing is probably the most versatile because on the drawing type slides, your students will have a pencil, they'll have a highlighter, an eraser, lots of different color options. They can resize the tools to make them bigger or smaller. And they have the option of putting in a text box so they can type some information on those slides. And then the last one is draggable. On a draggable type slide, your students will have icons and they can drag them to different places on the slide to respond to the question. Okay, so let's see. We have used our template library and added some pre-made content to an existing slide deck. We've edited those templates and customized them. But what if you already have a slide and you want to add interactivity to an existing slide? You can do that. So over here on the left, you see I've got my slide deck open. And there's nothing special about this slide deck. I've added a couple of templates, but I also have some slides that are just static slides that I created. This was a blank slide. I found this image online. I added a text box, where would you like to go? And then this graphic I found on one of the templates and copied it and pasted it onto this slide. You'll see there's not a footer here, so this is not an interactive slide right now, but I can make it interactive if I want to. So with this slide on my screen and my sidebar open, I can choose a question type and make this an interactive slide. So I want to make this a draggable question. I want my students to have an icon and they're going to drag it and place it on the slide to show me where they want to go. So all I need to do to make this interactive is click on the question type that I want. When you choose draggable, you have some options. So on the right side, this is a preview of what it's going to look like for students. They have a red dot and they'll move it onto the map to show me where they'd like to go. If I don't want to use a red dot, I can look over here and use the drop down arrow and see what my options are. So the first category is some icons that have arrows and flags, a maps pin. There's another category for math operations. Then we've got numbers, some fun icons, people, a fish, even a taco. And the last one is punctuation. So if I don't want to use the dot, I can use this pin since this is a map. And if I don't want it to be red, I can click on that color and choose a different color. I can add another one. It defaults to the same icon, but I don't have to stick with that. I can go and choose a different icon. And of course, I can choose a different color. And let's add one more. How about a star? All right, now that I have my icons, I could add up to 5 icons for the student to move around on the map, but I'm going to stick with 3. On the right, you see I have a preview of what it's going to look like for my students. I think those icons are a little bit big, so I can use this slider bar to resize my icons. I can make them bigger, but I want to make them a little bit smaller. That looks about right. And now I'm ready to update my slide. Pear Deck is working, and now I have the footer, so I know this is now an interactive slide. It tells me right over here, do not remove this bar. You see the 3 icons that I've chosen. And remember, on the student side, it's going to look a little different. We saw the preview of what it was going to look like for students. They'll see the icons on the slide itself. So now we've made this an interactive slide. Another thing you can do, right down here, you have the option to add audio to your slides. You can add audio to one slide or every slide in your slide deck. You can upload files that you already have on your computer. So if you have an audio of a poem, a chapter of a book, a piece of music you want your students to listen to, you can upload a file from your desktop, or you can record right in Pear Deck. I love this option because I know I've worked with a lot of students that need that support of oral administration, and this is an easy way to add that to your slide deck. So all you have to do is go click on Add Audio to Slide. It loads the recorder. If it's on my desktop, I can upload it here, or I can record right in Pear Deck. Hi, students. Please move the icons to 3 places on the map that you would go if you could go anywhere in the world. Now I can delete it if I want to start over. I can resume if I have more that I want to say to my students, or save. I'm going to go ahead and save. And now, just a warning, if you want to preview and listen to your audio before you insert it on the slide, you need to do it here. You can preview it. If you like it, you add it to slide. If you don't like it, you can delete it. The 3-dot menu on the right allows you to download it so you can save this audio file if you think you're going to use it later. This is the only place for the teacher to preview the audio. Once I click Add Audio to Slide, I will not be able to listen to the audio from the teacher side, only from the student side. So please make sure that you are aware that this is your chance to listen to your audio. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the slide. When I do, I get this green text box that says audio included. This is just a message. It also says don't change, so please don't delete that. Just like your footer, if you deleted this, you're going to delete the audio from the slide. You can move it around on your slide, make it bigger or smaller, but don't delete it. When your students are engaging with the presentation, this is just a message letting them know that there's audio available on this slide. What the students are going to be looking for is a button in the bottom right side that has the headphone icon in it. They'll click on that icon, that button in the bottom right, and that will launch the audio. The first couple of times I used it with students, they kept clicking on this green message, but they need to look for the button in the bottom right. So now we have made a static slide, interactive. We've got the draggable question type, and we've added audio content to our slide. So once you have made all of the interactions that you want on your slide deck and you're ready for your students to engage with the lesson, you will click on the green Start Lesson button. Don't present the slide because all you would be doing is showing them the slides. If you use the Share button, then you're just sharing the slide deck with them. To make it an interactive Pear Deck lesson, we need to use the Start Lesson button. When we do that, we're going to have a couple of things happen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Start Lesson. And the first thing I need to do is decide if I want this to be an asynchronous or synchronous lesson. If it's asynchronous, this is where my students will move through the lesson at their own pace. If you are doing an flipped activity or giving this to the students for homework, you'd want it in student paced. Instructor paced allows the teacher to guide the learning, and the teacher will move the students through the slides one by one. I'm going to go ahead and start it in instructor paced. And our lesson is starting. All right, so when I start the lesson, a couple of things pop up. The first thing that's on top is my teacher dashboard. So important to know, when you're using Pear Deck, there are 3 views. The student, of course, will be looking at their own student view, and that's where the student is able to engage in the interactive questions. The second view is our presentation view or projector view, and this is what you're going to be displaying to your students. If you're face-to-face in the classroom, you'll put it on your projector screen or on your smartboard. If you're remote, this is the screen you'll be sharing on your meeting. Then the third view is the teacher dashboard. This is the one that pops up right here. Welcome to the teacher dashboard. This is the most powerful view. We need to keep this off of the projector, off of our meeting screen, away from students' eyes, because the teacher dashboard is where we are going to see all of the students' responses, and their name will be attached to their response. So we want to be able to keep their work anonymous and not share it with the whole class. So the teacher dashboard needs to be kept private for the teacher's eyes only. So if you happen to have 2 screens, you can drag the teacher dashboard onto a second screen. If you don't have 2 screens, of course, you can use your buttons to minimize this, or you have another option. You can open the teacher dashboard on a second device. So if you have a smartphone, you can go to your web browser and type in app.peardeck.com/dash. When you sign in with the same Google account that you launched your presentation from, it will take you to the teacher dashboard on that second device. So I'm going to go ahead and move this one to my second screen, and we'll come back to that later. This is my presentation view. This is what I'm going to be displaying to my students. When I display this to my students, I will instruct them to go to joinpd.com and type in the join code. If that's difficult for your students, you can click right here, give students a link. It will copy a link to the clipboard, and you can share that link with your students. One thing that I think is a great feature of Pear Deck is that I can join my own presentation as a student without using a different email account, without using a fake student account. All I have to do is open another tab and paste in the URL, or go to joinpd.com and put in the join code. As a student, I get this climate survey so that my teacher can kind of see how all the kids in the class are doing. And once I have typed in my climate survey response, I am brought to the first slide in the presentation, meaning my teacher started the presentation on slide, I believe we're on slide 8, and that's where the whole class is going to start from. If I want to start from the very beginning, I need to make sure I'm on the first slide in my slide deck when I start the lesson. So right down here, I see that I do have a student connected. And when I'm ready, I can hit continue. The join code remains in the upper right corner throughout the session. So if a student comes in late, they can still join the session by going to joinpd.com and typing in the code. If a few students join and I want to display the information again, of course, I can expand it and show the join information to the whole class. So I'm going to go ahead and continue, and I'm going to split my screen so that you can see both the teacher presentation view and the student view. So I've got my 2 tabs open. I'm going to just click and hold and drag this one down and make it a little smaller. And the same with my presentation. So this is a good thing for your students to be able to do because sometimes it's necessary for them to be able to see both views at the same time. So on the right side, this is where as a student, I'm going to be doing my work. And on the left side, this is what I'm displaying to the class. So on the right side, you can see I've got my 3 icons that I can move around on my map. So I'm going to respond and show where I would like to go. Let's go here. Remember, this one has audio included. So in the bottom right, that's the button I was telling you about. The students will click on that headphone button and then play the audio. As a student, I cannot move through the presentation on my own because it's in teacher-paced mode. So on the teacher side, I have the controls to move my students through the presentation. I see how many students are in my session and how many have responded. The green tells me this is in instructor-paced mode. Blue would be student-paced. Then I also have the ability to show my students' responses. So on my projector screen, I have just the question, no responses. But when I'm ready to show responses, I can share the students' work with the class. I can hide the responses. And I also have the ability to lock students' screens. So if my students are still making their decisions about where they'd like to go, and I want to stop that process and have a discussion, I can click on lock screens. I get a message as a student that my screen is locked, and I can no longer move the icons on my screen. The teacher can unlock the screens and give control back to the students. Now, if you don't want to just abruptly lock your students out, you can click and hold, and you get options, 30 seconds, 1 minute, or 2 minutes of think time for your students to respond to your prompt. You'll see that I've got my timer, and one thing I love about it is it'll move out of the way. So if the timer is covering some important information, it will move out of the way. It turns from green to yellow to red to let the students know how much time they have left. And when it gets down to 0, the screens are automatically locked for the students again. On the teacher side, I can unlock the screens and move on. The teacher controls the pace of the lesson. So when I'm ready to go to the next question, I can move on to the next question. This one is a multiple choice question. So my students will choose their response. And of course, I'm going to say I use it and love it. And on the show responses, we get this nice bar graph that comes up to show the responses coming in. This is showing me all of my student responses at the same time because I'm in the overlay view. So think of the overlay as a sandwich. All of the student responses will be layered on top of each other and you'll see them all at one time. You can also look at the responses in a grid layout. So you would see all of your student responses here, and notice there is no identifiable information on the projector screen. I can't see which student responded with which answer. So they're completely anonymous, and my students don't have to feel worried about sharing their answers with the whole class. I can hide responses, and I can continue moving through the presentation. Okay. Let's look at a couple more question types. Okay, so this is one of our drawing slides. So on the drawing slide, my student is supposed to match the term to the picture. And right down here at the bottom are all of the tools that we have to use. We've got a pencil, a highlighter, a line tool, text box, eraser. We've got this whole spectrum of colors. So as a student, I can choose a pencil, I can choose a color, and I can draw my line. I can make the line bigger or smaller, so I can have a really thick line or a thin line. If I want to use a highlighter, the highlighter, you can see they're a little more transparent. So we can see through it a little bit. You can use this to have students highlight things if you want them to annotate a PDF or an image of a PDF that you've put on a slide or some sentences. You can use the line tool. This is a great tool if you're trying to make some shapes on your slides or having the students make some shapes. We can undo and keep undoing, and it'll undo the last thing that we did. The text box. So this allows the students to have a text box along with drawing. So lots of versatility here. And then of course, an eraser to erase what we've drawn. So if we want to start over, we can clear it and start over. So our drawing slide has lots of versatility, lots of features and tools to use. So when I want to share my students' responses, now I have some more responses coming in. I'm going to go ahead and show responses. And you can see that I'm in the grid layout, so I can see all of my students' responses. No names are attached to these yet. With the overlay layout, I can see everybody's responses right on top of each other. And the list layout, I can see one response at a time. Again, no names are attached to these responses. This is the number type question. So on the number question, the students have no choice but to respond with a number. When we look at the responses, we can see that we have one outlier here that has a pretty big estimate, and the rest of our numbers fall on the lower side. If I want to look at them individually, I can see all of my students' estimations. Now, this question is interesting because as a teacher, when I ask my students to estimate how many milk jugs were recycled to make this bench, I really want them to think about it and come up with an educated guess. When I see their number responses, I don't really get to see what they were thinking. So I might need more information from my students. So if you are in the middle of a session and you want to add another question, you can do that by going to New Prompt right here at the bottom. If I click on New Prompt, then I can choose a prompt to add to the ongoing session. You might recognize these from the templates we looked at the beginning. The only difference, if you're in an active session and you add one of these, you can't customize it. You have to take it as is. But if I scroll down to the third page, I have the option to use my existing content with a different response type. So this time I'm going to use the same content, but I want a text response. So I click on text and I can move my students by using my arrow. And now my students respond with a text answer. And if I'm with my students leading the lesson, I would verbally tell them that I want to know what their thinking was. How did they come up with their estimate? And so now I can get more information from my students, adding that new question in a session that is already in progress. All right. So this is another example of using the draggables. The first question that we made from scratch was dragging our icons onto a map to show where we'd like to go. This one is using the number icons to have students complete the equations to make them true. So I can look at this as an overlay And I can see for the most part, my students are doing a pretty good job. But of course, looking at it individually is more helpful. And if I see a student that is struggling with it, I know that I can reach out to that student and offer them support. If I need to see it larger, I can see it larger. This is an example of a website integration. What I've done is I have embedded a PhET simulation into the slide using that website question option. And on the student side, this is what it looks like. The slide is on the left, it's pretty small, and the website is on the right. And as it is in my session, I can click on it as a student and engage in that simulation without opening a new tab or window, without leaving the presentation. So as a student, I can engage in this simulation without leaving the presentation. As I said earlier, when you are using the audio, you can record your audio or upload a file. And this one was uploaded from a speech given by Theodore Roosevelt. So you can use that audio to add content that you found from other places. Okay, so we have lots of question types, lots of ways for students to interact. We can share and have class discussions, but what you really need as a teacher is to be able to see how each individual student is doing. And that's where the teacher dashboard comes in. So I'm going to bring my teacher dashboard back onto the screen. And now you can see all three Pear Deck views. This one is the teacher dashboard, the presentation view on the left, and my student view on the right where I'm interacting as a student. I'm going to make the teacher dashboard a little bit bigger. And on the teacher dashboard, you see I've got my questions on the left. And when I move to a different slide on my teacher dashboard, it's going to take my students to that slide when I'm in instructor paced mode. And I can hide my responses so that the projector is just showing the question. On the teacher dashboard, you'll see I've got some names listed here now. So when I'm looking at this question, I can choose how I want to view it. I'm going to go to the grid layout and see all of my questions or all my answers coming in. I can see my student names attached to their work. I have some other things here. I've got these faces from the climate survey at the very beginning of the session. And this is really important, especially because a lot of our students are not in the room with us. So if you want to do kind of a check-in with students, if they're not doing well, especially if you see the sad face, you probably want to check in with them privately and see how they're doing. So that's the climate survey data, student names, and then we've got these stars. So as a teacher on the backside, when my students are working, I can watch their answers coming in, and I can choose some answers that I want to display to my students and star them. When I've starred those answers, so I starred 4 of them, when I show responses, only the ones that I put a star next to are going to appear on my projector screen. If I remove the star, then that answer is removed from the projector screen. If I clear all the stars in the lower right, I can clear all the starred responses. If I clear them all, then everything shows up. So starring answers will make them appear on the screen, just the starred answers. But if there are no stars, then everything shows up. Let's say we had our drawing slide. I'm going to hide responses. So our drawing slide, I'm going to look at the grid layout, and I've got a couple of answers that I don't want my students to see. So I can use the 3-dot menu and hide that response. See how these are grayed out? Their responses are hidden right now. So if I hide responses, then even when I show responses, those two will not appear. So I've hidden these responses. I haven't used my stars, but I can make sure that those responses will not show up on the dashboard. It's particularly important with drawing slides because sometimes the students draw something that would be distracting to the rest of the class, and you don't want them to be able to share that with everybody. So I can control what's shown by using the stars or hiding responses. Another option I have is to leave my students feedback. So there is a leave feedback bubble. And if the bubble is gray, that means the student has been given feedback. If the bubble is not gray, then the student has not received feedback. So I can click on that, give them some feedback, and send it. Keep in mind, this is a one-way communication. The students will not be able to respond back to the teacher feedback. So generally what you're doing is giving them some redirection or a resource to help them to be more successful on that slide, or just positive reinforcement, but the students will not respond back. So once they've received feedback, their bubble is gray, but that doesn't mean you can't give them more feedback. You can click on there and add more feedback if you have more that you need to share with them. Okay, another great feature that you can access from the teacher dashboard is the ability to invite a co-teacher. So sometimes you have a support person, a student teacher, inclusion support, or a case manager that needs access to the class. Once you start your class, once you start your session, you can click on the 3 dots and choose Invite Co-Teacher and copy that invitation and share it with that other teacher that needs access to your class. When you invite a co-teacher, they will have the same access you have. They will also have their own teacher dashboard so they can provide feedback to students and they can see student responses. So invite co-teachers, that was one of those features that people asked for a long time, and it is finally here. So you can have a co-teacher on the class with you. At the top of the teacher dashboard is the class roster, so you can see all the students that are in your class, whether they're online, offline. You can see how they're feeling, might want to check in with this student. And if you see a student that is not supposed to be in this session, you can block them from the session. This is also where you're going to see if your co-teacher has joined your session. And this is another place you can go to get that link to invite the co-teacher. Once you have finished the session and you're ready to end, you will go right over here to end the session. When you end the session, you're going to click on Publish Student Takeaways. The student takeaways are Google Docs that your students will receive after the session has closed and when you publish student takeaways. So if I end the session and publish the student takeaways, all of my students will receive a Google document that contains all of the slides from the presentation and their responses. So the students don't get any student responses except their own. So when the students get their student takeaways, they will have edit access or edit rights to that document, and they can use it to take notes. They can use it to study. You can have the students open that document the next time you meet, and you can make sure that they have all of the correct answers or make corrections as needed. They can add information to that document and use that as a reference resource. So lots of power in the student takeaways. Now, when you have finished with your session and you're trying to find that student data after the session has closed, there's a couple of places you can go to get that. If you're still in your slide deck, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. If you're still in your slide deck, you can get to your sessions through the menu. And if you are not in your slide deck, you can go to peardeck.com and go to teacher login, and it's going to take you to the Pear Deck home screen. Up at the top, you're going to see sessions. And this is where all of your sessions live after you've closed them. It will show you when you accessed it, the name of your session, the name of the slide deck that you were using to present, if the session is open or closed. So live means the session is still going on in instructor paced mode. The blue is telling me the session is still going on in student paced mode. And then the black dot means the session is closed. So when I come to my session list, I can choose to go right over here to the 3-dot menu, and I can end the session. When I end it, it's important to give it a name. Think of a naming convention that makes sense for you, that's going to help you find these sessions after they've been closed. So possibly class period or subject area, cohort, whatever makes sense to you. So I'm going to say this is my Pear Fair session so that I can find it again. And now I see the name of my session right here. It tells me the type of session it was, and this is the name of the slide deck that I was presenting from. One question that often comes up is, do I need a new slide deck for every group of students that I work with? No. If you have 3 sections of the same content, you can use the same slide deck. You'll just open a new session for each group of students. When you come back after the session is closed to look at student data, you can go right here and reopen the teacher dashboard and view student responses, or you can go to the 3-dot menu and you can export the data to a spreadsheet. A couple of caveats about exporting to a spreadsheet: multiple choice, number questions, and text responses export perfectly to the spreadsheet. If it is a drawing slide, then on the spreadsheet, it will just tell you that that was a drawing slide. You will not be able to see your students' drawings. If it's a drag and drop, then you will see the XY coordinates where the students put the icons, which may or may not be helpful to you. So keep in mind, when you export to a spreadsheet, you will see responses for the choice, the text, and the number slides, but the other slide types don't translate quite as well to a spreadsheet. This is also a place where you can publish takeaways if you didn't do that before. And then you can archive your sessions, which does not delete them. It just moves them to the archived list. All right, so on the back side, you do have some options for your settings. So you can go right up here to your avatar and go to My Account. And in case you don't know what type of account you have, it's right here, and the crown is for premium accounts. But we also have our settings. I'm going to click on Settings. And at the top, I've got my classroom climate. I can turn that off and on. Immersive Reader, this is in beta, but it is available. They're working on it, so from time to time it may not be available, but Immersive Reader is a tool that allows students to have the content on the slide read to them. This is a great resource for our dyslexic students, for our English language learners, for any student that wants that support of having the content read to them. Immersive Reader will read any content that's in a text box. They also can choose the target language they want it read in. So it does translate into lots of different languages. So please have that available for your students if that's something they need. If you are a world language teacher and you do not want students to be able to translate, you can turn this off. Google Classroom, if you're a Google Classroom user, you can turn this on and you can assign your Pear Deck sessions as an assignment or announcement right in your Google Classroom. If you want to use takeaways, make sure this is turned on. Like I said, takeaways are a powerful tool. If you want your students to receive those Google documents after the session is over, please turn this on, and then you'll have the ability to share those documents with your students. And the last option you have is to turn off and on requiring student logins. If you turn this on, your students will be joining with their email address. That way you will be able to see the students that are in your session, and you'll be able to see which responses belong to which students. If you turn this off, then students will be joining anonymously. They will have an anonymous avatar and nickname. So if you turn it off and they are not using their email address to join, you may want to consider adding a slide at the beginning of your slide deck asking for your students' names, preferably in text. So if you are exporting to a spreadsheet, you'll have that answer in your spreadsheet. I hope this session was helpful to you. And I hope that you use Pear Deck and see how much it allows you to engage with your students and giving your students a safe place to have their voice heard in the classroom. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye.